Welcome to Inside Mastery, and thanks for joining us. I'm Martin Soorjoo, mental performance coach and host of the show. Each week, we'll bring you leading experts and practical advice from the fields of human performance, psychology, and leadership. Now, let's get the show started. Today's guest is Nick Littlehales, sleep coach to elite performers. Nick will be talking to us about how to ensure our sleep provides us with maximum recovery so we can perform at our best. Hi, Nick. Welcome to Inside Mastery, and thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure, Martin.
Great. Nick, you're regarded as the leading sports sleep coach in the world of sport and the author of the phenomenal new bestseller, Sleep, The Myth of 8 Hours, The Power of Naps, and the New Plan to Recharge Your Body and Mind. You were the former chairman of the UK Sleep Council, and your clients range from international sports teams and athletes to major companies. All told, you've got about 30 years' experience in the world of sleep. Nick, please explain your journey to the audience. How on earth did you get to become the guru of sleep?
I think you pretty much encapsulated a lot of it there, Martin. As you said, being in the industry for over 30 years, I was a area representative for a company selling beds on the road. I'm the director of a large branded company and involved with the UK Sleep Council. Wandered across the world with affiliates and licensees, looking at all the sometimes crazy habits of how we approach sleep. And I think I was always a little bit fascinated by it. It was quite clear from the academic and clinical side how important mental and physical recovery sleep was to us as human beings. But everything that we were sort of gathering from that side had very little impact, if at all, on our everyday occupations and lifestyle. And I think sort of somewhat disillusioned, maybe a bit of a midlife crisis probably, sat in my UK office up in Oldham in Manchester. One or two things were going on around me that sort of triggered off a reason to contact Manchester United and ask them the question, Alex Ferguson at the time, as a local big company to a large brand like Manchester United, it seemed the right thing I could do. And got the answer back that they did nothing, but it's in that particular area. And it's not surprising because it's the late 90s. You know, we were sending letters to each other, not email and texting. And that sparked off a number of conversations. It was great that they were able to open the door to that sort of dialogue. I wasn't being a sleep coach at that particular time, Martin, but I was just downloading my experience into the head physio at the time about physical recovery. And, the media caught hold of that, gave me the title of sleep coach to the pampered Manchester United footballers. It was all a bit tongue-in-cheek and a bit of a laugh, why on earth that was happening. But since that particular point, sports science, data analysis, technology, lifestyles, the world of sports media, 24-hour news, 24-hour shopping, we've literally shifted into a completely different arena. And over those years, working with some of those elite sporting organizations who are prepared to grab hold of these areas and look for those marginal gains as these things started to develop. And I've pretty much been out there shouting about this myself for a long, long time. And it's certainly now come to the fore that, it's certainly, I think all of those things have kept on developing. And the work I've done with British Cycling and Team Sky and into London 2012 Olympics, Rio 2016, looking at all these various aspects, but in a far more, how do you get through your day rather than this is what you need to do kind of approach. And looking at each individual within their sports and trying to find a way of improving their mental and physical recovery approach, i.e. sleep, but looking back at how we've done it, over the centuries as human beings, because we haven't changed that much, and neither of the circadian rhythms of the day. So our whole way of dealing with trying to get absolutely the maximum amount of ourselves and out of every day is somewhat a bit of a myth to most people. And when you start when you start pulling it away and sort of talking about it in a far more practical, open, achievable way, it's certainly something in elite sport, Martin, that if you can't replicate your approach to this, wherever you are on the planet, in whatever climates, whatever environments that you're in, then basically it's almost not worth doing it. So you can set yourself up in your own home or in and around your own family and your own sport in your own country. But with most athletes and CEOs and managers traveling all around all the time, how do you try and make that work when you're walking out of a hotel into an arena?
That's one of the things I really loved about your book, Nick, that it's incredibly practical. It's not something that is only for athletes. It's clearly, there's so much valuable content, useful advice, practical tips that the everyday man and woman who isn't an elite athlete can implement.
Yeah.
And, listening to you, and for those of our listeners who aren't within the United Kingdom, you really started out at the deep end, because back then, Manchester United and Alex Ferguson were really the biggest names around. So you didn't start small. Yeah. You really sort of started out big. But since then, you've gone on to not only have British football teams and athletes and Olympic athletes, but international teams. And again, from reading your book and listening to you, your clients now include, executives and people from all walks of life, because listening to you, what you're really saying is that these principles, these tools are applicable, and they apply, not only across, different parts of the world in different climates and different time zones and different conditions, but also to people who have entirely different lifestyles.
Completely, and it's those sort of things that always fascinated me. And whilst I've had a lot of engagement with the clinical side and academic side, and it's absolutely great that they continue to investigate this whole particular area. But it is still a little bit of a sort of void in our days, in our weeks, where we wander into this area, and once we're in it, we have no control over what we're going to get. So the better understanding you have, whoever you are, like you said, that you've got a better understanding. It's everything you do from the point of wake until you next go to sleep that's going to determine that quality. And when I've started working with people from all over the globe in all sorts of different occupations, we've got some very exciting things going on in the US. I've partnered up with some guys called Shift Performance Global over there, and we're putting the R90 recovery technique into their system to take human performance to another level. And we're even talking to people like General Electric about this new well-being program that's exciting. But it's not sort of something from out of space, Martin. It's actually simply what's in the book applied to everyday life, like across America, who have some pretty significant well-being red flags flying at the moment.
Now, Nick, one of the interesting things about your book is, although I've read pretty much every book on the subject and papers, and it's a subject that I often discuss with my clients who are trying to improve their mental performance. What I love about your book is there are things in there that others are simply not talking about, whether it be circadian rhythms, whether it be chronotypes. And I want to dive into those a bit later on along with your R90 sleep system. But I wonder if I can just start with something really basic, just taking it back to fundamentals. From your perspective, with the 30 years of experience that you've got, just how important is sleep to the physical and mental performance of athletes and the rest of us mere mortals?
I think there's a number of ways you can look at it. There are some significant personal performance benefits in if you just want to make that last lap in an Olympic final. You're Sir Chris or Jason Kenny, Laura Tross, wherever you are, and you just want to, in the final stage of that particular event, is to just have better stamina, better concentration, be more alert, and be able to just maybe take it up a gear and not make a very sort of tenth of a second decision that just determines whether you cross that line or not. there is always those areas, and how you bring somebody along that route to peak at a certain time, which is almost, in Olympic terms, 4 years in advance. And the whole process of going through that, where recovery is absolutely key, is one side. I think the other side to personal performance is because of our approach. What we do is we tend to approach this too late. So I see it all the time where individuals will just keep bringing in little things in isolation, trying to put things right. They continue to push on through overstimulating or bringing sleeping tablets in or using energy drinks, various things. There's other little things that are used around, little tobacco tea bags up between your lips to get a nicotine hit. I think this is what happens. We push and push and push. We've got no education. And so the performance factor is we don't actually know that we're going backwards. And it's like a shadow of your former self. And it happens quite slowly because we're quite resilient as human beings. So we can push it. We can push hard and make sure, we get everything done in our day. But slowly but surely, you're just coming away from where you should be. And that's one of the critical performance factors. I think the one that sort of comes out of even more so now about things like preventatives to Parkinson's disease, dementia in the longer term is something that this generation is not going to be overly concerned with. They're trying to get through every 7 days and every year the best they can. And when you start to shift to those types of interventions with drugs and other things like that, they become a cocktail of disaster. And we're seeing so much more of that. So there's pretty much two sides to it. There's the one where you're looking to achieve something on a particular day in advance, like an elite athlete, and how you get there with your coaches and recovery. There's the other one is where are you likely to be in 12 months if you continue to approach a routine that's so random, with little interventions here, there, and everywhere. Suddenly, you're going to have relationship problems, mood and motivation, weight control, type 2 diabetes. You will not be at your best. You'll make poor decisions, and you won't necessarily have a control around you that actually spots these things. So that is one of the biggest dangers we see now as far as sleeping recovery performance.
You've made the point a couple of times that there's a lack of understanding out there, and I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of myths and misinformation about sleep. What are the most common ones that you come across?
The most common one is that when I ask, and I could ask the question tomorrow in an elite organization or in a primary school or in a corporate environment. How many hours do you try and get every day? And the number 8 crops up. And I don't know why, really. It's just they may have read somewhere, and it's quite true, that a healthy adult in any 24/7 period wants around 33% in sleep recovery. That's about 8 hours. But their approach to that is principled. They'll get up most days at a similar time, 5-day week, 6-day week, to do their occupations or family life or whatever it is. And when they've gone through the whole day and got round to a point where there's maybe only 9 hours left before that point, they start to try and do things in a sort of worrying way. Oh, I need to stop doing this and I need to stop doing that because I need to go to sleep because there's only 7 hours left.
And we lie awake sort of worrying about it.
Yeah, it's this last-minute approach to think that right at the end of your day, you can suddenly do some things that are going to change everything that's happened in the previous time since you woke up. So I think that's one of the first things. The other one, which is why it's a sort of myth, is how many people in our lives do we know who work shifts? Not just shifts at night and sleep during the day and operate during the day, but people who work 3 or 4 days on one shift pattern, then 3 or 4 days on another shift pattern, then a period of days off, going back to normal, so they think, and then on it goes. We've got pilots like that. I get contacted by pilots associations going, we're just going too far here. We're not working just normal shifts so somebody can put themselves in a in a different type of circadian process, using different types of techniques in a sort of polyphasic way, sleeping shorter periods but more often during the 24-hour period. If they're doing that on a regular basis and their chronotype suits that, then we can do it. But if it doesn't and you haven't got an approach, it's almost fatal in those particular areas to some. So I think one of those myths is you can only sleep for a block all at once. And it was only Martin when we as humans invented the electric light bulb, which is blue light. We invented that light bulb. We extended our daytime because we could keep ourselves awake, because before that it was gaslight and candlelight and things like that, which never affects us in that process. Up until then, if you look back, put it in your browser. If you look back, we've always done a few hours at night, woke up for a few hours again. Nap times between 1 and 3, early evening. We've always taken that approach, trying to manage the natural circadian rhythms of the day. So this day and age, that approach is most definitely the best way to go. So that's one of them. Yep. The other one, I think, is key to that as well, is that you have to have certain things in place, like don't eat too late before you're going to sleep. Well, you need to know when you're going to sleep for that to happen. Not lying in, catching up on sleep. All of those little things around sleep deprivation. You don't carry sleep deprivation around in a suitcase. All you do is feel the effects of your approach to it. So if it's not good quality and you're not know how to get enough and when to get it, you spend most of the day just trying to pull yourself through it. And people sort of think, well, could I sleep on, less hours a day? Of course you can, because there are so many people within the population of this planet who do not even try to get 8 hours of sleep. They sleep on a lot less, and it's absolutely natural. So those are the biggest ones.
And I think, Nick, you've just slipped in something which I just want to highlight, because I think it will come as a surprise to most people that so many of us believe that we can sleep an extra 2 or 3 hours to make up for, missing some sleep in the week. And that's actually doing us good. But in fact, you're saying, and the point you make in the book is every single day we should try to wake up at the same time.
Yes, I think, if there's anything about the sun-up and sundown process, which triggers two critical hormones to be produced in our bodies, one moves us towards relax and chill out, towards sleep, which is melatonin. The other one which is serotonin, moves us towards wake and active. And those two things are quite clearly triggered by blue light, daylight, and our interaction with darkness. Amber light, firelight, candlelight, that is not the same, but in a dark environment. So when you're with that process, you can actually go through most 24-hour periods, and if you know when you can do things and why, but then what you do is you have a complete control of it. So I wouldn't catch up to try and say, I lost some sleep, so I need to catch up and just go to sleep earlier or sleep in later, and it's all random to how long that process happens. If I've already planned not to get the right level of sleep, i.e. cycled that particular night because of events that are going to happen that I'm already aware of, I would simply put that right with a 15 or 20-minute zone-out period, i.e. nap, just to put it back in balance. Because that's a much better way of going through that process and not getting to the point when you're going into sleep that you're absolutely so knackered you just pass out. That indicates you're doing things wrong. Right?
Absolutely. Now,
that's what it goes on. Right?
You've talked about blue light a couple of times, Nick, and I'm familiar with blue light, its impact, and I wear those strange blue light blocking glasses of an evening, and I have to remind myself not to answer the door when I'm wearing them. But again, for our audience and for those who aren't familiar with them, can you just briefly explain, firstly, what is blue light and how can it help and indeed hinder us?
It's a fantastic light because it's daylight, and daylight triggers us to go from a wake state to a relaxed sleep state. That's what we've got there. And our relationship with it, very, very simply, if we're outside all the time, we get to the end of the day, the light starts to go. We put a fire on. That light doesn't affect us. The melatonin builds, we fall asleep. The sun comes up, the blue light comes along, switches that to serotonin, triggers all the wake functions, and off we go, we're active. And that is what we do all the time. Once you get out of sync with that and increase the levels of blue light, so instead of getting towards the end of the day and we build a fire, and we're now in darkness, so melatonin's building, we've still got blue light coming from the artificial light. And now we've got tech. So when you keep pushing blue light into your system, you're just looking in the mirror and saying, stay awake. That's what's happening. It's not your mindset. This is what's going on inside your brain and inside your body. So as long as you're over excessive exposure to blue light and not enough darkness into your life, you're going to get completely out of sync.
So what can people do about that?
What you should do is from my world, Martin, I know we got all these blue light glasses and everything. From my world, what you've got to start doing is not also see it in relationship to information overload. The two things. So while you've got your glasses on, protecting yourself from the blue light, you're still working. You're still taking on information. And this process needs to be balanced. So what I would advise everybody to do is from the point of wake, and particularly now we're, depending on where you are in the world, we have these seasonal changes and clock changes that can have it. But principally, the first thing you need to do when you point of wake is to have blue light and daylight hitting you to get that serotonin going. That gets you into a wake state. As you go throughout the day, every 90 minutes, you get wristbands these days that just vibrate every 90 minutes. If you don't know what that feels like, is every 90 minutes, just take a few minutes away from what you're doing. Try to change some of your little habits. You've got water on your desk, put it back in the kitchen so it forces you to go and get something. Just every 90 minutes throughout the day, give your brain a chance to download and deal with all of the information we're getting, because it's off the charts compared to when I was a director of a company in the mid-90s. Off the charts. So it's not about all the balance. If you balance your information overload with nice little recovery dates, you'll balance your blue light input, and you'll get two of those things going. Rather than telling all the young people out there, or all the fast movers, the snoozers to losers, that you've got to start shutting your tech down just before you go to sleep. No. If I've done it right during the day, right? If I've created moments where I'm away from this direct blue light, and I've created moments to help my brain, then when I get towards my sleep state, if one of the final things that I'm doing in the final 90 minutes is checking on things and doing things with my tech, if I know what I'm doing, then I haven't got a problem with this at all. It's more to do with that information overload.
Okay, so really you're saying there are two problems then for those of us who use tech late at night. Yep. The first is the blue light, and I think you'd agree that certainly limiting the blue light, and in your book I really smiled when you explained how you put bin liners around the windows when you're traveling with teams across the world, sports teams across the world, and that's what you advise them to do. And so the first issue is limit the blue light, but then the second point you make, which I think is often overlooked, is don't stimulate the brain. Cut the information.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think you just have to get a better relationship with that process. It's not sort of wandering back and looking how we did it before, because things have changed and they're going to change even more. But you do have to get a better relationship between light and dark. And darkness doesn't mean total blackout. It just means that you're away from as much as you possibly can, from the artificial lights, from tech influencing you all the time, and all of that information. And just try to take some moments out, even if it's for a few short minutes, because that'll add up to when you want to go into a sleep state. It'll all add up and make it better. That's the kind of relationship we want with it, not forcing yourself to shut down tech or wearing glasses right at the end of the day, because if you haven't had this process in the first instance, it's not going to have an effect at all, really, once you get to that particular point.
And again, that's a point you make. You talk about pre-routines, pre-sleep routines, and post-routines. And one of the takeaways I got from the book is to really think of sleep as a 24-hour block almost, in the sense of literally, as you said earlier, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and to plan in advance, not to leave it at the last minute and then think, okay, maybe if I put on my blue light blocking glasses for half an hour, that will solve the problem. You're saying you actually have to be proactive, and very much like elite athletes, you need to have a routine.
I suppose how many people will be, might be sat there maybe tomorrow at some point watching the US elections into the early hours, maybe with their blue light glasses on, but watching something that's probably going to change the world. And so the information that you're looking at is having far more effect on the blue light coming from that device, whether you've got diffusers on it or glasses. Yep. You're actually, putting your attention there. I think when something, you've read the book front to back, Martin, one little thing is if you start thinking in 90-minute cycles rather than hours, then you start thinking, just how many cycles do I need in any 24-hour period, not just at night. So if you think 7.5 hours, 5 90-minute cycles a day, well, when am I going to get them? 4 at night between those 2 points, and then I'm going to grab one midday or early evening, depending on seasons and depending on how I feel or what I'm trying to do. And then when you look at 7 days in front of you, that's 35 cycles in 7 days. But where are those 35 cycles coming from? 4 there, 3 there. I've got a really late night back at 2 o'clock, so that's only going to be 2. I'll pop that 30-minute nap in between there, or even another 15-minute one later on, just to keep a balance. So I might have 35 cycles in 7 days, but 29 of them are back-to-back 90s, and the other 6 are 30s and 20s. So you start to look at that, and in elite sport, in anybody's life, when they just look at the period in front of them, they can start to see how these things pan out. And as they change in front of you, rather than going, oh my God, what time will I get home tonight? I might have eaten too late and everything else. The pre-sleep is all about, with a nap, right, I'm going to take one. What's the time? It's between 1 and 3. That's fine. This is natural for me, completely. Where am I going to do it? I can sit in the toilet. What's my little technique for doing it? Well, I'm going to rub this stone. I'm going to listen to this sound in here. I'm going to put a towel on my head. Whatever it is, you're just zoning out. A little bit of caffeine before you go into it. Comes in 20 minutes later. Brings you out of it better. Have I got 30 minutes or just 20 or 15? Still going to do it. Bang,
you're saying, Nick, that that's still worth doing. So for those people who don't have, say, the luxury of working from home, and they work at a office or maybe a factory, or they work off site, and so they're not in a position where they can get say 90 minutes in the afternoon between 1 and 3. You're still saying it's worth, if they can get 15 minutes, it's worth doing.
It's your approach to it. We think about the pilots at the front of the plane. They don't leave the cockpit. Their environment doesn't change. They're still going 500 mile an hour. They're still 35 off the deck, and they've got a tube of people who desperately want to hit the floor safe. Now, how do they do it? And I think it's this thing about napping, or recovery rooms, and whale noises, and sleep pods, and colours and smells, and everybody should go in the same room and nap together. I'm not going to do that. This is a personal thing. I might fall asleep on a train or public transport because of the circumstances, or behind the wheel of a car when I don't have any choice. Think about the power of this process. And if you're in a little bit more of a control of it, between these moments, you can simply just zone out. And even if you don't fall into a sleep state, you can do it anywhere. I can do it in front of you, Martin, while you're talking to me.
Oh, hopefully not on this interview, Nick.
Well, no, it's just one of those little things that once you change your aspect to it, and before your main sleep, when you're going to put a few 90-minute cycles together, you've really got to think about maybe 1 or 2 things that you've done during the day, and it all becomes subconscious. Maybe you've increased fruit and vegetable intake, so you may have taken on more water than you would normally do. So don't overhydrate in that final period. Empty bowel and bladder, because that's not going to help you go through the process, help your brain. Don't keep working and download. Move from warm to cool, light to dark. All of these little things are just helping you move towards that sleep state. And and get the best quality you can out of it from whatever period you're allocating to it. That's all.
Now,
just don't try and fix it at the end of the day.
You also touch upon chronotypes, which again is something that very few other authors deal with. And you talk about the challenges faced by people who are night owls or early birds. Can you elaborate on that?
For all the time I've been on this planet, particularly as you get into your, mid to late teens, I've always realized that when I like to get up in the morning and get going, that's me. I have met a lot of people who are exactly the same, but there was never anybody talking about it. I've also met people, you have to drag them out of bed. They hate it, but they come to life in the evenings. So recently, we've been able to spot that it's a little genetic twist. And we do have this AM chronotype and PM chronotype. And these are things that we have inside of us. Now, as we start going through our careers and choosing our occupations, we don't bat an eyelid to anything we want to do as far as this is concerned. But what you can clearly see now, when we relate data, like in US hockey, you take all the teams there, you look at all the data, you look at identified chronotypes of individuals, there you go. It's not rocket science, to use an old school term, but there you have it. Fouls, speed between 2 points, goals scored, all of those factors. The AM chronotypes like the midday games, don't like the evening games, and vice versa. And these might only be small percentages in some cases, but they're a difference between winning and losing. And with a company, it's a difference between maybe gathering a deal or not gathering a deal, or sustaining productivity or efficiency, or absenteeism. I've done this with a number of small companies, and we're going to be doing it with much bigger companies. If your company is principally a nighttime operator, let's say, and your team is full of morning chronotypes, you're going to struggle. You're always going to struggle. If your squad is NFL or NBA, if you don't spot these little tiny things, then you're doing things with certain individuals at the wrong times, and they have to try too hard to overcome it. And when you start to make those subtle changes in that sort of aggregation of marginal gains, if you're a nighttime chronotype and you identify it early, and you say there is a job and it's shift work, you're all right to do that, because nighttime chronotypes don't mind shift work. But if you're a morning chronotype, you're always going to struggle with it. You'll be able to do it for a while, maybe a number of years, but eventually it was a poor career choice, and you will struggle, and so will your company.
So really, we need to identify: are we a night owl or a morning bird, and then really try to design our life around that, recognizing that that's a reality which we probably can't change.
No, you can't change it, and you can't. It's not about, I can't do this now because I've got my chronotype, Nick says. No, it isn't. But we all know that if, as an employer or a coach, you've got a team of people there and you're asking them all to come in at the same time for training, you know that the nighttime chronotypes will have jumped out of bed at the very last minute. The morning chronotypes are up and nice and bubbly and running around, can't wait to get going. And in a lot of cases, when we've worked in and around cloak, there's been these very simple twists that we might put dawn wait simulator lights into the training ground to help the nighttime chronotypes get their day going, get the serotonin going. We might adjust certain things where that group of people might do certain things in training first rather than last. We may look at things like, well, how many nighttime games have we got? How many daytime games have we got? All those particular kickoffs. It might be that that person is not training that well that day, but if we understand they're a PM chronotype and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, there is a reason why. Watch them again in the afternoon and they're flying. So even within business, it's not to say that you can be that specific when somebody can belong to you to be employed. But this is a world of getting it right, not wrong. We're under pressure to save every penny we can and be more efficient. We're trying to push our people like mad. And when you do all of that, if you've got a better understanding of this relationship, what you stop them doing, which I come across all the time, is they're just popping drugs, overstimulating to the hilt, and hardly sleeping at all. And that doesn't always come out that quickly inside any environment. It hides away and festers for sometimes years.
You mentioned temperature, Nick. As the winters draw in, a lot of people obviously have the tendency, the desire to keep warm and keep cozy. But does that help us? Is it good to go to bed, feeling very warm and in a warm room?
I think it's one of those other little things, and it's everywhere. It's even crept into my book because it's one of these. It's a fact. 16 to 18 degrees. Your room environment needs to replicate the sun up and sundown process. And he says, well, okay, probably a lot more of us have got temperature control, in our rooms, but we're really not focused to be going, hotel rooms, friends' places, different parts of the world. We've got to have this room at 16 to 18 because if it shifts to 20 degrees, our sleep will go down by 50%. We don't have this relationship with data and management yet. We're miles away from it. It'll come, Martin, but right at this moment in time, all you need to understand is it's totally natural. It triggers so many things inside of your brain and your body that if you move from warm to cool, that's what it is. As the sun's gone down, it's warm to cool. Now, all you need is to have that concept in your head. So as long as you're trying to protect your environment, your bedroom and your bed, so it doesn't get as hot as the rest of the house, it's trying to keep it aired and cooled, not cold. Trying to do certain things before you get into the room, into the bed, raising your body temperature, a little bit of light exercise, stretching, meditation, a quick light shower, a quick bath or something like that. If you like it warm, just get a bit warmer than the room. If you like it cold, then you're fine. But how many people in the classic relationship of boy and girl, two people, one likes it roasting, the other one likes it cooler, and they spend all their night in an environment that's so counterproductive to sleep, they might as well be in separate rooms because they're totally affecting each other.
Absolutely.
So temperature is absolutely critical, and we don't even think about it really in that sense of it's got to be 16 to 18 degrees.
Now, you mentioned the R90 sleep system. Can you just explain, firstly, what are the pillars of this system? And is this something that's simply for elite athletes, or is it something that anyone can benefit from?
It's anyone because it's elite athletes, any athlete, professional, amateur, whatever sport it is, from archery to very, higher profile, more active and physical sports like rugby league and rugby union or rowing. Whatever it is, you get told at the end of what you've done, go upstairs, get some sleep, and we'll see you in the morning. That's it. And so what it is it's completely relevant to anybody. And I can actually introduce this to primary school teachers and primary school kids and to hospitals, universities, and corporates, everywhere you go. And most of the people who contact me are in all of those sort of areas because it's getting bigger and bigger. And all it is an educational process, Martin. That's all, because nothing goes on in our schooling or from our parents. So it's 7 pillars of knowing the key sleep recovery indicators. Its principle is based on thinking about sleep in 90-minute cycles rather than hours. We're just trying to redefine the definitions of these things and try to get away from sleep a bit and think about mental and physical activity. What's your approach to mental and physical recovery? Because if you haven't got one, you're going to struggle. And it's number one, just put it in the browser. Tap in circadian rhythms of the day. You'll get images pop up that will explain it, even with a few images, in a much better understanding of your interaction with this natural process that will never, ever change. And if it ever does, we won't be on this planet, right? As humans or the sun passing us round. The second one is this chronotype. Just identify with it. And so that every day you can at least make subtle changes this season, that next month, that quarter, that year. Just every chance you get to make a subtle change that helps you. And don't go into periods of the day thinking you can just fly through it You can have certain things you can do before you hit that to minimize the effects it's going to have on you. And your choice and selection of lifestyle. You don't have to drain it back. Just when you do things will be more productive. You're thinking 90-minute cycles rather than hours. This is a simple way with a constant wait time that all of us have got because of chronotype and everything else and occupations. If you think in cycles rather than hours, you can find your own way of finding exactly just how much sleep you need. For the first time in your life, just how much sleep you actually need. Could that be 4.5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 7.5? When and why? That could be a life-changing thing for you. So don't just keep thinking 8 hours. Pre and post, yes, they are both important. What you do in the final bits of the day, but they're not answers to a poor approach. So pre and post is all about what you do from the start of your day to when you're going to go into your next sleep state, whether that's midday, evening, or night. And you can actually not sleep at all in a 24-hour period if certain circumstances dictate that it's probably not wise to even try and do it.
Right.
The other area is a balance between activity and recovery. You can't just blast on every hour of the day, just pushing. The clever ones in the background, they don't adopt snooze to lose. They actually use a mental and physical controlled recovery period between 1 and 3 and 1 and 5, shorter cycles at night. They use that to get ahead of everybody else. So you can always spot the one who's taking this approach because they're ahead of you, not behind you. The sleeping environment, your own sleeping environment, you can make some checks on there to make sure that everything in that room is designed for mental and physical recovery and not anything else. And the actual products you sleep on, just remember that they should be correctly profiled to you and they don't have to cost a fortune, but just make sure that you're making selections, which is all about going to sleep and staying asleep, not just all about style and function. And those are the 7 areas.
That chapter in the book is a really great chapter because I think so many of us go into a bed store and we're really at the mercy of the salesperson. And you really bring to life how people can empower themselves so that actually they go in knowing more than the salesperson and don't need to spend $4,000 or $5,000 or whatever, and I think that will be extremely useful and is one of many reasons that people should go out there and buy your book now. Nick, this has been a really great conversation. You've done exactly on this conversation what you did in the book, which is you've packed lots of practical insights and information, and you're clearly a guy who knows his onions, given that you work with the most elite performers in the world. Where can folks find out more about you, your company, services, and of course the book?
The book called Sleep is available through the old world of all good bookstores, Amazon. It's starting to drift out. It's been translated into 9 different countries now and more to come. So it's readily available through all online stores. There's also an Audible version from audible.com for anybody who likes to listen to this, and I'm actually the voiceover for it. Sportsleepcoach.com is your best place to always go. That's our main website, sportsleepcoach.com. Always packed with great free content. We're at Sports Sleep Coach on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, all those platforms, providing free content all the time, and the podcasts and our product store. And, we're extremely open company. Anybody wants to ask a question about anything, they just get in touch, and we do our best to help them wherever they are across the globe. And that's pretty much it, Martin, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Nick. I'll include all of that information in the show notes. You have a great day and good luck with your mission to enable the world to sleep better.
Well, that's very kind of you, Martin. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Inside Mastery. If you did, please subscribe and support the show by leaving a review on iTunes. And if you want to reach out to me, you can find me either on Twitter at Martin Soorjoo, on LinkedIn, or via my coaching website, martinsoorjoo.com. Thanks again and have a great day.